best web browsers to use would be Chrome or Firefox. And without too much else, I would love to introduce Deanna Carroll and Beth Diebold. They are joining us from John Deere, and they are going to tell you everything you need to know about that virtual interview, which we still are doing. So make sure you take notes, ask all your questions so that you can be all set for our recruitment fair later, and you can, have a leg up on that virtual interview.
Excellent. Thank you, Sylvie. We're really excited to be here today. Deanna and I are both from John Deere. We're with the Construction and Forestry Division in Dubuque, Iowa. And today we're going to talk about how to nail your virtual interview. First, we'll start with some introductions. So my name is Beth, and I'm the Manager of Engineering Services with Construction and Forestry. I've been in engineering for over 17 years, and for background on my education, I finished up my MBA just this past December at the University of Iowa, and my undergrad was in mechanical engineering, also at the University of Iowa. When I'm not working, I enjoy spending time with my family. I love reading, hiking when I can do that. We're right along the Mississippi, so there's some beautiful hiking in the area and really enjoy that. In addition to hiking when we get to travel to other places in the U.S. Deanna, can you give your introduction?
Absolutely. My name is Deanna Carroll. I'm the engineering manager of electrical and software here at the Construction and Forestry Division of John Deere. I've been working in embedded controls in one form or another for 20 plus years. The last 10 to 15 here at John Deere. I have too many degrees, so I won't even bother mentioning those. And then for my free time, I like to take road trips, just go out and see someplace that I haven't seen before. And thank you all for joining us. Please jump in, ask us questions. We'll all have a lot more fun if we're talking with you rather than just presenting to you.
Yep, we'd like this to be somewhat informal and interactive. If you want to pop up on camera and ask a question, we welcome that. If you're more comfortable putting that in the chat, please do so. Deanna and Sylvie are monitoring that, so feel free to jump in with questions. Again, we want this to be of value to you, so let us know what you're interested in learning. So for a virtual interview, some general things for interviews would include, making sure that you're being honest with what you're telling. An interviewer can tell if something doesn't quite seem right, and we'll ask lots of follow-up questions. So make sure you're prepared with some examples that you're being completely honest. Prepare. I can't emphasize that enough. And it shows that you value the interviewer's time, as well as your interest in the role that you're interviewing for. So definitely spend a lot of time preparing. I recommend that you bring notes. Notes are pretty important. That's something I do when I interview for roles. And the other thing that you want to do with that is make sure you ask the panel, hey, is it okay if I utilize my notes? I've never had anybody tell me no, but worst case that they say no, we prefer you don't use notes. All the time that you spend preparing those notes and reviewing them right ahead of the interview, again, that's a way to prepare. That will be time well spent. Consider writing down the question as they ask it to you, and then refer to it as respond. Many times the response will wander off topic, and it might be a really good example, but it doesn't answer my original question. So take a second, scribble down what the question is, and then you can refer back to that as you continue through your example. It's really important to focus on the question asked. You want to adjust the level of detail to the audience. Hopefully at the beginning, the interviewers will give at least a brief introduction, or if you know who they will be ahead of time, if you have a way to look them up, perhaps on LinkedIn, or if you're with an internal role that you're applying for, understand a little bit about their background or ask a little bit about their background. So if you're applying for a technical role and the people on the call are in that field and very technical, make sure that you're speaking to the level of detail that makes sense for them. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I sit on many interview panels for electrical or software engineers to bring in an outside perspective. And it's pretty telling to me their communication skills when they adapt it so that I understand, or they're checking for my understanding. So adjust the level of detail to the audience and make sure, ask for feedback. Is this making sense? Do you need any more detail? Avoid speaking negatively. You really don't want to speak negatively of a coworker or a professor, it leaves you open to the interviewer wondering if you were the one causing the issue. And even if the question asked for somebody about a situation where something wasn't going well, or you had a difference of opinion, keep in mind that keep in mind the other person's perspective. What were they trying to bring to the conversation or to the table? There are many different work styles, and just really avoid speaking negatively of anybody. Find that balance between confidence and arrogance. Prepare beforehand. Manage that balance between confidence and arrogance. You don't want to sound arrogant. You do want to make sure you sound confident enough, depending on how you naturally respond to things. Some people naturally feel more confident, and some people, like myself, I don't always feel as confident. So for me, I almost have to ramp it up a little bit to sound confident, but that can transfer pretty quickly into arrogance, which can be a pretty big turnoff for an interviewer. If I can get that. All right, so shifting to specifics for virtual interview, all the in-person interview guidelines and expectations apply. But a few things specific to when you're virtual: please test the technology ahead of time. It'll really throw you off your game if you end up 10, 15 minutes late to an interview. I'm happy to roll with it, but that just takes away from the time where you get to speak to your experiences and your qualifications. So if you have to download Teams or you have to utilize Zoom, I've had people be, again, 15, 20 minutes late because they couldn't get the technology to work. If you have concerns on want to find out more, ask ahead of time. Hey, is there a link I could try ahead of time? Recruiting. I know when we send out the interview notices, it includes some instructions on how to download the system, the Teams application if you need to. So please test that ahead of time. Even if you're calling in from home, please consider professional attire. What you choose to wear is a choice, right? And dressing up, putting on a shirt and tie, or a business casual shirt with a blazer can speak a lot that you're interested in the role. Consider your background. I've got this picture to the right of a pretty messy room. That can be distracting. So use of virtual backgrounds is also acceptable if you've got sufficient bandwidth. And, small things like if you're calling in from your dorm room, make the bed. If a closet is behind you, please just close that closet door. Take a few minutes. In this picture, even if this person did nothing else but shove everything to the other side of the bed, it would still look a little bit better for the interview than what you see here. Minimize any distractions. If you have roommates or pets that can come into the picture, I've seen that rattle interview candidates because all of a sudden they're worried that the dog or the cat or roommate is coming into the frame. From my personal perspective, I can roll with it. I'm happy to roll with it, but I've seen it rattle people. So if you can minimize that, I think it helps yourself. Interviews are stressful. You're really putting yourself out there. And so minimize the distractions. It will really help you be able to focus. As well as some interviewers may also be distracted, and you really want that focus to be on you and your skills and your qualifications and what you bring to the table. Consider your body language. I know when I learned how to do interviews, it was always in person, and hopefully we get back to that someday. But I knew when I walked into that room how I wanted to sit up straight, had my hands to my side in a neutral position. I tried not to fiddle with my pen or other things. Sometimes on video, we can forget that, so make sure you're not so comfortable that you're doing things that you wouldn't normally do in a room with an interviewer. Katie, I see you've got a question on bringing in portfolios to virtual interviews. I would say yes. Sometimes there's opportunity for that. I think it's good to have it with you. You can always refer to it. Or I had somebody bring in a sketch that explained one of their engineering concepts, and I found that very valuable that they were able to share that with me, and they even had a copy that I could take with me. So I've seen that done really well. You may not have an opportunity to share that, or they may say that they aren't able to let you do that. So I think having the information would be good. I do see a question on virtual and video interviews being around to stay for the long run of taking place of traditional in-person interview. I see it as another tool in the toolbox. I don't see them completely replacing and going that way forever. I would agree with what Deanna said. I think they will have a place. Absolutely. That's a good question. There is some advantages to being able to turn around quickly without having to have someone make travel arrangements to get to a location. You know, I could see first round interviews continuing to stay virtual in some cases, and then, you know, there could be a shift in that direction as well. All right, so now I'm going to switch gears just slightly, talk about targeted selection interviewing. That is the interview style that we use here at John Deere. And behavioral interviewing is based on the premise that past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. This is created by a third party, and several companies and industries use this style of interviewing, though not exclusively. And so I'll go into a little bit more detail on what the framework is for this type of interview. And keep in mind that we just want to know how you behaved in the past, because it's a good predictor of your future behavior. So this follows the STAR format, which stands for situation, task, action, result. So the situation is the context in which the action took place or the challenge presented to you. Here, it's really important to be specific, and you want to be brief on this section. Sometimes we're tempted to fill in a whole bunch of context and extra information that may be relevant, but if you can keep this part very brief, the part that you really want to focus on is your actions. So actions are the steps you took in addressing the situation or problem or completing the task. So make sure you're describing your behavior. A lot of times people will say, we did this and we did that. If you're talking about we, that probably is part of the situation. We were tasked with this, but what did you bring to that team? I know that you did something with that team, that you contributed some great things to that team. That's what I need you to focus on when you get to the action section of your examples. So minimize the use of we. Said another way, no generalizing, saying, I always do XYZ because it's important to teamwork. Well, that may be very true, but I need to see how you applied that with your past behavior so that I understand how you'll do it in the future. So again, stay away from the generalizations. I always do this, or I think this is important. That may be great, but that's not what we're looking for in this part of the interview. This really should be the longest section of your STAR when you answer those questions. And then the last part is the result. So this would be the outcome and its impact or its implications. So as you're preparing and thinking about what situations to talk about during your interview, try to find examples with a definable outcome. You don't want to get all the way through your example and the interviewer says, great, what was the result? And you say, well, we don't really know yet. It's still in process. So think about that. Make sure you can find examples that you can say, we improved this by X%, we saved this much money, we turned it in on time, met our deadlines, and got a great grade, right? There's all kinds of results that can be applicable, but you do want to make sure that you have a complete example. Another result that you should include is feedback that you received on your actions. I led a decision analysis, or I led a team to investigate a new method. What was the feedback you got from your team, right? Oh, they were very appreciative of being pulled in for feedback, that type of thing. Include the feedback that you received on your actions where applicable. My professor gave me a grade I was really happy with. My boss gave me great feedback that this was exactly what they needed. Include that. And then what did you learn, and have you applied this to other situations? There are some interview questions that take a little bit more of a negative tone, like tell me about a time you made a decision too fast, or you wish you had gone a different direction. I tend to stay away from those, but they are out there. And then if you can, please make sure in the results that you articulate what did you learn and how have you applied these lessons learned to other situations.
Hey, Beth, can I interrupt with the question that we
Please
got?
do, yeah.
This looks like one we should field for the audience. It's, as an interviewee, what do you think I should do to deal with the feeling that I am not bringing enough to the table, or that my education has not properly prepared me for any real work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know I've talked to a lot of students that have told me that they feel this way. So I'm going to jump to the next slide where we talk a little bit about preparing. And I would say many students feel like they're in that boat, and we recognize that you don't have the work experience. So even if the questions are geared around that, know that you were selected for an interview for a reason. You wouldn't be there if you didn't have what they were looking for. We don't have time to interview people that we aren't serious about. So have that confidence that you're there for a reason. And so ways that you can prepare, you can look for recent situations and actions that show favorable behaviors. And I've listed out a whole bunch of things that are relevant to students and others. So if you've had little work experience, definitely look at your coursework, all of your project work, any work experience that you have, even if it's not specific to engineering. There's often teamwork examples, even if you were a cashier at a grocery store. At one point, you can often get examples from that. If you have engineering specific experience, you want to focus on that because it's relative to the job. But if you're trying to get that first set of experience, look to these other areas to where you've likely got some fantastic experience that you can share with the interviewer. And we know that students aren't going to have years of experience. We're looking for people that have the potential to grow into becoming a great engineer. We all started somewhere, and we recognize that.
I just want to echo what Beth said, and the best way I can that I can communicate that to you is we have been doing this for years. We are super busy. You made that cut for a reason, as Beth said. So there's something there, or you wouldn't have got to the point where you're in front of our interviewer or our interview team. So try to grab confidence from that, and then prepare and present what you do have on there, and we'll probe where we see that. So we'll probe as well.
Right. We're interviewing. We want to find out the great experience and capabilities that you have. We really want you to know that you're there for a reason, and we're trying to learn as much as we can about you. So even if we're asking tons of follow-up questions, that's a good thing because we're trying to learn more. We like what we hear. We want to hear more. So be open to that. There is a question: how much do you consider volunteer leadership roles, like serving as an officer for your HKN chapter or community service? Key. It's great. A lot of the great examples I've heard over the years were exactly around that. The skills you learn as a volunteer leader for any organization or community service, you're trying to get people to do things that, you're influencing without authority. You're learning so many lessons along the way. You're learning organizational skills, delegation skills. I mean, it is fantastic experience to get as a student. And I would encourage all students to look for those opportunities to be involved in those things and learn from those things. As you prepare, I recommend that you prepare at least 5-star responses. You may or may not use those exact ones in the interview, but have at least 5. I know for our interviews, we ask 5 questions that we are looking for that star response. Having a few extras in your back pocket are always a good thing. Some of the questions will throw you. You can usually turn some of these examples to match the question being asked again, and that's a good reason to write it down. So you can make sure that you're answering the question asked. And then look at the bullets that you have on your resume. If you put that bullet on your resume, there's probably a pretty good star behind it. So think about it from that perspective. So all the things that you put into your resume, that should translate directly into what comes through in the interview. Where possible, use examples relevant to the position. If you're applying for, let's say, a controls job and you did a controls senior design project, or you had a controls class where you had a big project, try to include that somewhere in the interview. You're trying to showcase why you're a great fit. And again, if you don't have any of that controls, you haven't had the class yet, or you haven't done anything specific to that, use other examples, but where you can, make them relevant to the position. And then I can't emphasize this enough, in addition to preparing, practice. Please practice. It's very different, thinking through the examples, but then actually having to say them out loud. Whether you say them out loud to yourself, find somebody to practice with, you can Google targeted selection questions and find all kinds of examples. So practice. I know I've been on panels where someone came in and you could tell they hadn't practiced, and I, by coincidence, had known them ahead of the interview and knew of things that they had done that they weren't bringing into the interview. And that can be pretty heartbreaking because you don't want to lose out on that opportunity by not practicing. So it's uncomfortable, but please practice. I'm seeing some other questions come in. We are encouraged to come prepared with questions for the interviewer. What are some examples of questions that candidates have asked you that really stood out? I would say the questions that indicate that you know what you're interested in or that what you want stand out to me. Long term, I'm interested in this type of role or experience. I really enjoyed this type of class when I was an undergrad. Can you tell me about how that might apply to the role here? Those to me are the ones that stand out. And you're absolutely right. Please prepare questions. Please have some questions ready to go. It shows your interest, and it's a chance for you to give us some insight of what you're interested in learning. Other questions can be good of what does success look like in the first 6 months for this position. Deanna, do you have a couple other good ones?
No, I was just going to jump to the next question. I apologize. I was not paying close enough attention to. Sorry. Let me jump and take on Philip's question so that you can take a breath, Beth, is what I was going to try to do. So, Philip, I would say that I don't put the Boy Scouts or any one organization as the highest priority. I'm really looking for somebody that has taken on the initiative, taken on the leadership role, has gone that extra mile. So people that stand out from their peers in one way or the other is what I would say I'm looking for. So would that jump out at me? Absolutely. As would if you had been taking an active role in HKN or part-time jobs will catch my attention. It's that you're doing that extra, that more, that initiative.
Yeah, great question. So that's really the end of the prepared content. The rest of the time, we're happy to answer questions. If there's anything you want us to go back to or understand more fully, we are going to be at the booth if you do want to talk to us further. Those are the hours we'll be there. And then we also have this QR code that's to register interest with us and upload your contact information. So at this point, I'll open up the floor if anyone wants to pop on camera or put more questions in the chat.
Until we get some more of those questions going, I actually was just going to ask, considering that we have our recruitment fair later and you both will be there, going back before we get the interview, what kind of things are you looking for in terms of folks who come visit your booth that, what will stand out about that elevator pitch they might give you when they come to talk with you?
Spend a couple minutes out on our website, find out a little bit more about the company and come prepared with questions and, try to think about, what about the core values of the company or the mission or the products that we make stand out to you and have some questions for that.
I think that's probably the ones that I remember the most are the ones, the people that come in with the having already thought it out and have questions for me, whether that's in the booth or whether that's in mentoring relationships, when they show me that they're just not there by chance, that they're there for a reason and they want this from me. It shows me they're prepared, and it also is just easier, right? It's easier to have a conversation with a stranger if there's an intent behind that conversation.
And so someone who's not just coming and waiting for you to kind of lead the conversation
exactly
would be helpful. Cool. And then also just following up from Philip's question, would you say then that it would be helpful on your resume to say, okay, I was in the Eagle Scouts, for example, but then say, these are the things that I did, is that going to help you as a recruiter, as an interviewer?
Yes. Any of those extra activities or organizations are their first point. And then the follow-up to that will be, well, what did you do in that organization? And what was your role? What did you do? What stood out for you? And so by giving us those a few bullets, that just gives us a little bit farther into that next step. And then it lets us take it even deeper, right? It's just kind of, you're essentially fishing, right? You're trying to get our attention and then just kind of reeling us in.
Yep.
Absolutely. There was someone that was trying to join up on stage and I let him up. I'm not sure what happened, but if you want to try and share again, I'll make sure you get up on stage. And then Nancy had a question. A lot of people looking for internships here in the audience and in the conference this weekend. Can you talk a bit about the John Deere internship program?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. We have a internships within engineering, IT, HR, data analytics. I'm missing a couple, and they are at several units around the U.S. And when applicants apply, they're applying for internships that's handled by one central group for the entire enterprise. And through that selection process, they indicate their preference for which location they would be at. It's a 12-week program through the summer. This summer, interns will be on site. The past couple of years with COVID, they had been virtual, with the exception of a visit. But this year, they will be on site. Interns are provided with real world projects. They're placed with a team just like any other engineer in our group. They have specific projects that they work on. They're challenging projects. They're provided mentorship and training to help you learn how to do the job. And then we provide lots of opportunities for training and networking and development activities. And then at the end of the session, interns present their work for the summer to management. Interns can then be considered for returning interns if they have other summers, or for full-time employment for those that are qualified.
So I'll kind of add a tiny bit to that, and then I'll take the question in the chat around mentorship opportunities. I'll start with that one, and I'll let Beth jump in there as well. So FYI, the first place I look to hire when I have open positions are there any interns available? Do we have any experienced interns that I can be putting in my position, because they already come in with a lot of knowledge? So very good opportunities that we are looking for. In terms of mentorship, John Deere has many mentorship opportunities available across your entire career, both as a new employee and as a senior employee. I don't know if our president is getting mentored, but it would not shock me if he was. That's how high up they go, and they come out in many different forms. As an intern, you will automatically have one of our engineers that is I would consider a mentor, that is with you throughout that period as an intern. Most of our teams, I know all of my teams, will also assign a mentor within the team. So if, for instance, you came into our software test team as an intern, you would have Beth, who is actually one of the mentors for our intern program. You would likely have Beth as a mentor from day one. When you joined the software test team, we would assign you a colleague within that team as a mentor. And most of us have some type of mentor. We have in my teams, we have a special mentorship program that assigns one of either myself or one of my supervisors as a mentor. And then Deere as a whole has another volunteer mentor program that you can sign up for. So just a host of opportunities from a mentor, and those are the formal programs. I also get asked on a fairly frequent basis, just by someone in the organization that says, "Hey, I'm looking for a mentor. Would you mind meeting? Would you fill that role?" And I've never said no to that.
Similar. The other resource that we have are our employee resource groups, and they are incredibly active in providing mentorship opportunities, and specifically to interns. Our Society of Women Engineers group reaches out to any intern that's interested in mentoring. You don't have to be a female. It's open to all. Our Black Employees resource group, our multicultural awareness group. There's several ERGs, and all you have to do is show up, and they'll pair you with a mentor. So it's there. Plenty of opportunities are provided. We encourage that. And like Deanna said, when I'm approached, I've never said no. And I've often helped people make connections with other mentors. It's a big part of what I do.
In terms of what stock do you put in research or graduate education, Sylvie, did you see my intro? Way too many, way too much. No, it's education, it's problem solving. So
Initiative.
high value, high
Very
value.
high value.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Prakash, I see you've popped up. What's your question? Might have technical difficulties.
Prakash, we can't hear you. You look like you're on mute. You can put it in the, if you want to put it in the type.
Your audio's coming out a little shoddy. Can you type in the chat maybe what your question is going to be? Sorry about that.
Prakash, we are having trouble understanding you. It's not coming through other than his noise. Is there any opportunity for you to put it in the chat window and I will repeat it to the audience?
So while he does that, Deanna and Beth, thank you so much. It's been great. I had the opportunity to go, you had a workshop for Ed-Academy students not that long ago. And I went to that and I had the opportunity to hear a lot of you talk about the really, I mean, people think of John Deere, they might have one perspective of John Deere, but you have a lot of awesome technology and cutting edge kind of interesting things happening. I mean, everyone loves the big John Deere tractors and the big equipment, but there's some really cool stuff going on. So maybe opportunities beyond what people standard like think about. So maybe you just want to talk about a little bit about that, because I found that really fascinating. The really very leading edge kind of technologies you're working in and those kind of opportunities, quite exciting.
Yeah, great, Nancy. Thanks for asking. You can see in this picture, there's a lot of different pieces of equipment, and this is just a small piece. We have over 100 distinct product lines and types of equipment ranging from agricultural to construction, forestry, even golf and turf. And we're located all over the world. We have over 70,000 employees, and we're working on a lot of really cool new advancements in technology. Deanna, do you want to talk a little bit about some of our tech stack?
Guys, we have a lot of fun stuff going on. It's like a playground for electrical and software types in our org. Plus, you get to play on a really big piece of equipment while you're doing it. So just to start it out, I'd say a few years back, we probably had one electronic controller on our machine, one or two electronic controllers on our machine. Today, we probably are averaging something like 15 controllers on every machine. And that's going to be nothing compared to where we are 5 years from now. It's just expanding at an incredibly rapid rate. One of my teams is responsible for the e-backhoe. Go out, look online for it. It's an awesome machine. It's an electrified backhoe going out at our customer today. One of many that we are developing in the area. So a lot of electrification that we do from concept to production, and all of the things that come with electrifying a car on steroids, essentially, because our machines are so much bigger and thus have so much more load, for lack of a better word. And then the other big area for those of you that are into controls, we are automating our machines. So essentially everything you do in your car, we want to do in our machines, including driving without a person in the car. Fully automated is the goal, and not just fully automating the machine, fully automating the fleet, which means we want that machine playing with that machine, playing with that machine over there. And I think you guys can imagine how many sensors, how many controllers, how much software is going to have to be on those machines to make that work, and off those machines. Sorry, I'm showing my bias. I'm a very much on the machine side of this. We also have a lot of stuff going off the machine, offboard the machine, and all sorts of work being done there as well.
Yeah, you had a lot of people talk in this session, and everyone showed themselves on one of the big pieces of equipment. So I think that was really kind of fun to watch. So everyone saw that. But what kind of engineers do you hire? I mean, or computer scientists? What kind of disciplines do you hire from? What are you looking for? What kind of courses are really relevant, most relevant in these new disciplines and this exciting stuff you've got going on?
So I'm going to tell you the names I know the degrees by. Different schools have slightly different names. Different countries have different names. Electronics and electrical engineering, huge areas right now that we're trying to staff up. Software engineers, huge area, whether that's software within the electrical organization or whether that's computer science, computer engineering. There's a lot of different variants of the degrees, but we're looking for people that can build electromechanical systems, which means we need the controls engineers that can control it. We need the software engineers that can write the code. We need the hardware engineers that can make that equipment, can make those electronic controls work in our environment. We don't do a lot of the board design, the ASIC design. We tend to get that from a supplier. Though we do have one division within John Deere that does some kind of board layout. So we have some need for that, but I would not say we would go down into the ASIC. So it's kind of that level up, all the way into the electromechanical subsystem and then the integration of multiple electronic subsystems together. So you got me on my passion. I can't.
I know.
I'm
But
gonna stop.
Y'all should really, when you get over to the John Deere booth, you should check out the different job and the titles and the kind of exciting things. Because again, you might have one impression, and maybe I did. And then when I went to your workshop, and then I also looked at your job site and other things, I was like, wow, man, there is a lot of really cool stuff going on here. Besides just the awesomeness of your amazing equipment, but those kind of new technology areas and exciting projects to be working on and stuff like that. I found that really great. We had a question here about, does Deere utilize neural networks, computational intelligence, artificial intelligence in your design work or in your processes today?
Yes, and yes. Cybersecurity, yes. True. Worried about it, so yes, even more going for. That's one I don't like. That one I do not like thinking about, and thus we must think about. So that was in the question, was the cybersecurity. All of those others that you were mentioning, yes, control systems. And I think to the question about what do we see as the biggest challenge from a technical standpoint, because if you were to ask me, if somebody were to walk up and ask me today what my biggest challenge is, it would be hiring great engineers. So I'm telling you that because I want to give you guys that ray of what you're looking at is you're entering the market at a really great time. So that's currently my biggest challenge, but I'm guessing you were asking about my technical challenge versus my daily challenge, Sylvie. Technically, you're going to get a different answer from all of us, I suspect. I would probably say integration, the controls that's required to get all of those subsystems working well together. I think that we can design a piece or a segment of code to do what we want it to do. And then when we have 40 of those to come together, it rapidly becomes harder. So to me, it's the integration of everything coming together that is the biggest challenge in the environment that it has to operate in. And then my bias is controls, but I think that's a bias. My background is controls, and that's where I see the challenge.
Yeah, for those that were asking about autonomy and some of those, I would say there's some great stuff out on YouTube from our CES, Consumer Electronics Show, where we announced our autonomous tractor. There's a press release where our CEO, Jamie Hindman, is talking about some of these technologies. It's really cool. So, definitely go check that out. There's a lot of information out there and some really exciting things that we're working on.
It is really awesome, guys. It
Yeah, it's
truly
exciting.
is fun.
Again, and when we asked people in the workshop what they were interested in, the machine learning session was amazing. So, someone might not have thought about that. We thought machine learning, do the tractors learn? But I guess all the technology behind it was really kind of fascinating. I really got a lot out of that session. Yeah, thank you for doing that. And we did this special group with HKN students, and we're doing a lot with John Deere. We're really grateful to you for bringing all of this tremendous information out to many people, and making sure we know about the opportunities and the great things. I think Prakash finally asked his question here.
Yeah, let me throw that one out there. So Beth, I want you and I both to take this one on.
Yeah.
What would you suggest to senior professionals if they want to interview for a senior/executive position? And he mentions it both in person or virtual. And for a senior one, we would want in person at some point. To me, you're looking for problem solving. I'm always going to be looking for problem solving. As you go up higher into the more senior positions, you're also looking for what I would call strategy, which is problem solving in advance of the problem, that future planning. That to me is a reasonable definition of strategic thinking, that you're anticipating what's coming. And then the other piece I would probably put in there is, there's a lot, but maybe the people side of it, because by the time you're in a senior leadership position, you need to be able to amplify your thoughts and your directions. And the way you do that is through the rest of the people. And so are you developing those people to be senior leadership? And are you engaging them and getting them to want to run with your vision?
Yeah.
Beth, please add on.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have a choice between in-person and virtual, I would pick in-person every time. You could also consider the team that you would be leading in this senior position, if that's applicable. If it's a technology-based position, will you be leading a team that's scattered around the globe? Maybe there isn't one particular in place, and in which case you could opt to the virtual one to showcase how you would lead remotely. But without a doubt, in person, and really take advantage of that extra time, even the time in between meetings and walking to the interview room where you're just chatting. You're also learning in those instances. So that's one thing that I think we missed out on a little bit with the virtual interviews. And the situation is what it is, and we're working with it. But there is some things missing on both sides. Being able to come and see the facility you would work with, meet more than just the 2 or 3 or 4 people on the interview panel. So I would pick in person.
Yeah, probably like culture, right? Because again, we always talk about workplace culture and finding a really good match for yourself. So it is a match between your style and what you're comfortable with, and what the company's culture. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about the culture at John Deere. I've gotten to meet a bunch of people. I know some of you are really awesome engineers. So, I think maybe, when you talk about workplace culture, what would you have to say about that?
We skew really heavily towards teamwork. We set up our structure that way. Nobody can go sit at their desk all day by themselves and be successful here. We depend on each other, and everybody brings something different to the table, and that makes the whole greater than the sum of the parts. And I'd say that's pretty deeply embedded in our culture. Our core values: integrity, quality, commitment, and innovation. I see those lived every day. That was a big reason I chose to come here, was those match my personal values. And through the interview process, and my father worked at Deere growing up, so I had some exposure to the company prior to applying. That really matched for me, and I know I can contribute to that, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it might seem like an intangible, but I think, Beth, you're really right. That's so important. And I'm sorry, Deanna, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. So I worked at several companies prior to coming to Deere, and why I am still at Deere and will be at Deere for the rest of my career is probably the integrity piece, which sounds nice, and every company is going to claim integrity, but I've never seen a company demonstrate that like John Deere does. And in my, and in particular instance, one part of the integrity that I really like is that John Deere takes care of their people better than any company I've ever worked for. And that's why I'm going to stay here, because as a manager, having to let go of people is something that I do not like to do. And I know at John Deere that we're going to take care of our people to the best of our ability.
Well, that's an awesome thing to know when you're looking at a company, because you are looking for the right fit. We all know you spend a lot of time at work. Even if you thought you spent a lot of time at school, you spend a real lot of time at work. There was one other question. Did you see that one? If a person isn't initially selected for a position, maybe you want to interviewing, what would you say to them to get a better interview or try again, or what would you recommend?
No, that's a great question. I'll tell you, the first time I interviewed for John Deere, I was not selected. This was for an internship, and I got experience elsewhere, and I came back and I applied again, and then I was selected. So not getting that job, while that's hard, doesn't mean it's no forever and that you'll never be a fit. I always recommend that you follow up with the interviewer and say, what were my gaps? What can I do to improve? Mm-hmm. Ask for that feedback. It's not always easy to hear, but you're also finding out how willing they are to provide that constructive feedback. And that tells you a little bit more about the company as well. And I would say, try again, ask for that feedback. And if you feel like you can close some of those gaps, either by doing coursework or continuing to gather experience, practicing your interview more, whatever that feedback is, try again. Don't give up. And,
don't get discouraged, guys. I have had way more rejections than I've had offers in my career. That's just pretty typical. And what you want to also keep in mind is that the interviewers will remember you. And so even though you may not get a position that time or that position, you've made yourself visible, and you may reap rewards later on. So first and foremost, don't get discouraged. It's just part of the process, unfortunately. And then just keep trying, and asking for the feedback is impressive. I can tell you, the people that come to me and say, what did I need? What can I improve? What did you see? I think most of them have always been hired at some point. When I think back to the ones that asked me that question, I think most of them ended up in my org at some point.
Yeah, that's probably a problem solver, right? If you actually have the wherewithal to ask, what was it, and then you can work on solving the problem. Engineers are problem solvers, so I think that's great. I think that really says the kind of personality that someone is. And said, well, I want to always be improving. So we're going to see you over in your booth today and tomorrow. Anything else you want to tell people as they prepare to come over and visit you and visit your job board, or anything else you want to talk about with? You're both going to be there, right? Both of you are going to be there. So you get to go over and meet Beth and Deanna. I'm sure you're going to love talking to them. Anything else you want to tell people that are listening right now?
We really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. We love all the questions in the chat. We hope that you found value in this, and we would love to continue the conversation at our booth this afternoon.
Thank everyone for talking with us.
Well, we really appreciate both of you and all of your support of EDICAP and of IEEE, and for working so closely with us. It really, you bring a lot of great information, help people get prepared to succeed, and we want to get all those great people into jobs, maybe at Deere, but also this information is just really valuable and interesting. It's a lot of fun to hear, and your perspectives. I've heard you speak several times, and I always learn new things from you. So thank you so much. Okay, well, great. Our next session is about 10 minutes from now. So hopefully you'll join us for our next session that will be on effective computational intelligence in industry. So maybe, please, Beth, Deanna, maybe you want to come back for that too. Maybe you have something to add, probably some great questions for our speaker in that session. So you can talk about what Deere is doing. But thanks everyone for joining us at this session. Thank you so much, Deanna and Beth. And thank you very much to John Deere, wonderful sponsor and supporter of EDICAP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.